Can you share some of the tools that are a part of this that help? Because I mean, when you describe what it does, it's like, wow, that sounds like this massive thing that's going to solve all the problems. But there's tactical tools that all kind of work together. So can you kind of share that?
Yeah. So the EOS model is based off of the construct that there are all entrepreneurial organizations face 100 plus issues at any one time. But we believe that by strengthening 6 key components of your business, that you'll be able to really get to the root cause and move the organization forward. So those 6 components. So what I'll do is I'll go and I'll talk about the 6 components, and then I'll go back through and talk about the different tools or disciplines we have outlined within the model.
Cool. So, yeah, and for people listening to this audio on audio, I just brought up the a visual of those 6 components. So if you want to check out the YouTube version, you can see the six components here.
Great, thanks, Kirby. Yeah. So first off is vision, right? Every entrepreneurial organization, you have to have a great vision to start with. That's where the business typically starts, right? Then the second component we talk about is people. And this is about getting rid of the buzzwords like A-listers, top quartile, and really identifying who are the great people for your organization, because it's different for every organization. And then we talk about the data component, which is running your company on facts and figures, not hunches or intuition, but really getting you solid information. When you get your vision, people, and data, components strengthened, you're going to uncover a lot of issues. And so what we do is talk about is getting those issues out of people's heads and onto a list, and then setting them up, resolving them, and knocking them out forever. The 5th key component is process. And this is about doing the key things for your organization right each and every time. Provides consistency, scalability, easier to manage. And then the 6th key component is traction. And this is about execution, right? This is where most companies fail or are not as successful as they could be in getting to that, achieving that vision, because vision without traction is just hallucination. So those are the 6 key components. And now I'll talk about a couple tools or disciplines in each one. So the first in the vision is what we call the 8 questions. And we actually keep those, the answers to those 8 questions in a document we call the Vision Traction Organizer, or VTO. And if anybody wants to see that, Kirby, I can definitely give that to you or send it out to them.
Yeah, I'll put a link to that in the show notes.
Okay. But the VTO, there's 8 questions that we as implementers work with the leadership team to answer. First is, what are your core values? What are really the true core values of your organization? Not the aspirational or the baseline, but what are the core values that make people great in your organization? And then when I talk later about the people, we'll talk about how we use those core values to attract the right people to your organization and to repel those who aren't a fit. Second is core focus. So this is your sweet spot, right? This is what do you do better than everybody else? And really defining that and getting the entire leadership team to align. And again, that's the purpose of the 8 questions, is that it's not just the visionary or the CEO, it's the entire team agreeing, and not just on the words, but what they mean. Because if they're interpreting them differently, you're going to go in different directions.
Yeah. So
core values is about who you are. Core focus is what you do. Then you alluded to the 10-year target. So the 10-year target is your big, hairy, audacious goal, or your BHAG, right? It's what are you really trying to accomplish? The time frame is actually flexible. It could be anywhere from 5 to 30 years. Most organizations settle on a 10-year target, but it's about that, like, what are you really trying to accomplish down the road? So once you have your 10-year target, then we talk about your target market. So this is about identifying where you want to spend your precious marketing and dollars, right? So we identify the target market, the psychographic, geographic, demographic that you're targeting, so that you're talking to the right group. You're spending your money there. We talk about what are your three uniques. We help to flesh those out again with the leadership team. What are the three things that in combination separate you from all of your competitors? What do you do better than everybody else based off of these three uniques? Then we get into what is your proven process, which is usually just a one-page visual about how you get customers, anywhere from when they first start thinking of you to when they're a client, you're servicing them, retaining them, and having them as long-term, members of your community or whatever. And then finally, what is your guarantee? And the guarantee is just something that you offer that reduces any barriers to entry or any, geez, I don't know if we want to do that. So it could be, 30 minutes or it's free, right? How do you entice people so that they're willing to buy, and it removes any arguments against that? So once you have your core values, your core focus, your 10-year target, and your marketing strategy identified, then we start to make it more real, and we talk about what is your 3-year picture. So a 3-year picture is not a 250-page strategic planning document. It is about what do we need to do in the next 3 years to meet that 10-year target. So what's your revenue, your profitability, your measurables, which might be number of units, number of states you're in, whatever. It depends on what your business does. And then we get everybody on the leadership team to picture it and agree, what would that look like? Close your eyes and what would it look like if we achieved that 3-year picture? So once you get that, and the reason is because if everybody's seeing it the same in their mind's eye, then your ability, your opportunity to actually succeed in doing that is a lot better.
Yeah.
And then we go to, now from there, what's your 1-year plan? So we identified your 3-year picture. What do we need to do in the next year to get to that 3-year picture? And again, we talk about your revenue, profit, measurables, but then we also identify what are your 3 to 7 priorities for this year. 3 to 7, not 37.
Yeah.
3 to 7. Because if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority, right? So we help the implementers help the team to identify what are those 3 to 7. And then from there, we go to your rocks, which we refer to as what are your priorities for the next 90 days. And 90-day rocks are, again, identified as the company rocks. What are the 3 to 7 highest priority things we need to do in the next 90 days in order to make this happen? And from there, then we also have an issues list, which is, again, about getting the issues out of people's heads and onto, paper or bits and bytes, right, in today's age. But it's about getting them out of people's heads so you can address them. So we work with the leadership team to answer those 8 questions. Then, but if you want to get your vision across the organization, you actually have to tell people about it, turns out, right? The leadership team identifying these things, but then you have to get out and tell people about it, share that information. So we call it shared by all. It's how do you get that information across to everybody? So when you've answered the 8 questions and talked with everybody and everybody understands it and really shares that vision, that's 100% strong in the vision component. Any questions there, Kirby, or do you want me to go to the people?
I think that's I just want to just jump in real quick, because it sounds like there's like so much that you just listed, and someone listening to this might go, man, that's like going to take me forever. This is actually everything that you just mentioned falls on 2 pages. That's the VTO, or the Vision Traction Organizer. It's just a 2-page document. And so it's taking basically your 10-year or up to 30-year vision of where you're heading, and just every component of that just narrows it down and backwards plans it out into achievable steps down to the weekly, what you need to do next week. So as an entrepreneur, it's easy to get out of bed and say, there's a million things I need to do today. I mean, I have a real estate business. There's no end to my to-do list of things I could do on all the different properties I have, to find more properties, financing, all that stuff. What's most important to do this week? And that's what this does. That takes it, okay, based on where you're heading, this is what's most important to do this week, and then over the next quarter, and then over the next year. So I just want to reiterate that, and it doesn't have to be crazy complicated, but it does have to be intentional. You do have to think through this, or else you're always going to be kind of chasing your tail. So so that's great.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you want to,
and we really talk in EOS about working on the business. So this is your opportunity to work on the business as opposed to in the business, and to really get that vision 100% aligned throughout your organization. And again, we work with the leadership team. When I say we, I'm talking about myself and other implementers. We work with the leadership team to develop your start with all these 6 key components over the course of 3 full day sessions. And so that's our process for implementing this in organizations. And I'll go quicker over the other ones. Just the vision has a lot of meat there, right? Because if people aren't aligned on the vision, then that's where you're not orchestrating and harmonizing all of that energy, right? You really need everybody rowing in the same direction and understanding what it is. So people, the people component, we talk about right people, right seats, right? The Jim Collins, get on the bus, make sure everybody's in the right seat. We work with the leadership team to make sure, again, we're identifying what are the right people for your organization. And we do that based off of your core values. And we provide what we call a people analyzer, which is a way to really look at the people in your organization to see if they're demonstrating those core values consistently. So that's how we define right people for the organization. Right seats is about making sure that people, we call it GWC. They get it, they want it, and they have the capacity to do it. So get it, do they just, it's innate. They understand it, right? Do they want it? Do they really want to do that job? They jump out of bed excited to do that job every day. And then capacity, do they have the training or potentially the physical capabilities or whatever? Do they have the capacity to do that job? And then we look at making sure we look through everybody in the structure and make sure, number one, we have the right seats identified, and then 2, that we have the right people in those seats. And right seats, we talk about the accountability chart, as I mentioned earlier, not an org chart. What are you accountable for?
Yeah. And I think I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off. I just want to reiterate one of the big benefits of this is that now you have a model to run people through, your people in your organization through. So as a business owner, a lot of times you've got these people that work for you and you're like, they're kind of good. They struggle in some areas, and they kind of just linger around, and you don't have a full commitment that they are the right one for that organization or commitment to let them go. And so this is very defined. Like, you put them through, do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity? You make a yes, no decision on different factors. And then at the end, based on the answer to that, you either let them go, put them in a new seat, or you need to hire somebody else. So yeah,
exactly. It makes it very it makes it easier to have tough conversations because you have something. You're not just like, there's something a little off with Greg. I don't know what it is, right? But this enables you to actually have those conversations black and white, right? It removes it's not personal. It's here are the things that we all agreed to were important, and these are or are not happening. And it's not just difficult conversations, right? You can celebrate people as they, right? We do a core values shout out, in our meetings, so that, you get to show people who are and highlight people that are doing well. So one other thing with the right seats, again, I mentioned the accountability chart. We work with the leadership team to define the right seats, the right structure for your organization, because it can be different, right? So we outline those visionary and integrator roles very clearly. So 100% of the people, right seats, that's 100% strong in that component, in the people component. For data, Again, we talked about a scorecard. So other people use other terms, but we just go to the basics because, again, we're all about simplifying. What is the scorecard? What are the 5 to 15 weekly metrics that you could give the leadership team when they're on a beach somewhere and they could know how the company is doing? So it's got a specific measurable, who's accountable for it, what is the goal, and then 13 weeks of history at a glance so you can see if there's any trends. Eventually, you get to the point where everybody in the organization has a measurable every week, 1 to 3 measurables that they are accountable for each week. And again, you go through and it's on a scorecard somewhere in the organization, and you go through it, and people either they made it or they missed it. So we're very simplistic from that perspective. You either made it or you missed it. 90% of the way there is missed it. And then is it an issue or not? But anyway, we'll get to that later. But that's the construct, right? Everybody has, you have a scorecards and everybody has a measurable. That's 100% strong in the data component. For the issues, first thing we already mentioned is an issues list. This is about throughout the entire organization getting issues out of people's heads and onto a list so they can be addressed, and having people who are willing to be open and honest and say, I have an issue, and not hide it and not talk about it around the water cooler, but to bring it somewhere where it can actually get work done. So issues lists throughout the organization. And then IDS is our issue solving track, which is to identify, discuss, and solve. Kirby, you mentioned it earlier, right? You have your weekly meeting and people get in the room and discuss the heck out of something.
Yeah.
Lots of discussion. But very rarely do they come in and really identify the root cause, discuss it briefly, which is all about, not repeating the same thing. That's just politicking. You've said it, it's out there. And then solving it, which typically is an action item for somebody to go do or two. So really it's that identify it, discuss, and solve. With your issues list, what we do is you have your issues listed, you prioritize the top 3 for that week, you IDS the first one, solve it, cross it off, go to number 2, same thing, number 3. If you get through all 3 issues, then you reprioritize what are the next top 3. That way you're always dealing with the top 3 issues that are of most priority to your organization every week, and you don't get caught in those sidebars.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people can relate to this, or maybe you're in an organization where this pops up, where every week you're talking about the same issue and it keeps popping up. What this does is we talked about it, everyone gave their input on it, and then we decided that this is the way we're going to solve it. And out of that, becomes action items that are assigned to different people, and it's crossed out. We're not going to talk about it again. And if those action items don't get done, then it shows back up as an issue, but maybe it's an issue with the people who were assigned those action items. So it just, it holds the accountability level just skyrockets compared to what it is in typical organizations.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because, if you thought the issue was, we're not sending out the product in a timely manner, but you actually find out that it's a people issue because John is the one who's slowing it down. And so how you solve that is different, right? Is it a process issue or is it a people issue? But this helps you to get to that, really identify what it is, discuss it, and then solve it, right? Go out and solve it and knock it out and don't have it come back again.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah. So the 5th key component is process. And we take a entrepreneurial 20-80 approach on process. So first is identify what are your 8 to 10 core processes. I mean, what are the really the very few core processes you have? So organizations typically have an HR process. They have an operations process. They have a sales process, maybe a marketing process. But it's really identifying what those are and then documenting them at the entrepreneurial 20-80. What are 20% of the steps that get you 80% of the way there, as opposed to documenting, every step and ending up with an 800-page standard operating procedure that nobody reads. So it's really about what is the high level processes. So document them, simplify them, and then followed by all, right? So you have the processes. Now, how do you make sure they're followed by all? Well, you have to train everybody on them who touches them. You have to monitor, are they actually being worked on in that way? And then, provide correction or updates or whatever. And so having all of your core processes documented at that 2080 level and followed by all, that's 100% strong in the process issue or component. And finally, traction component. So traction is, again, this is about execution. This is about really, the what is happening that is advancing you towards achieving the vision. First thing we talk about is rocks. I already mentioned those in the VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer. This is about turning providing your organization with a 90-day world, a picture for what is important for the next 90 days. What are those 3 to 7 company rocks and 3 to 7 individual rocks that are the priorities for the next 90 days? And the term rocks comes from Stephen Covey, where he had the glass cylinder, he had a bunch of rocks, he had pebbles, he had sand and water. And if you don't put the rocks in first, you're not able to get to the rocks. So you put the rocks in first, which are your priorities. You put in the pebbles, which are your day-to-day business activities. You put in the sand, which is, the phone calls and everything else that happens. And then water is, the rest of what's happening, right? All the other distractions. So, but if you don't put the rocks in first, if you don't make those the priority, you never get to the rocks. So that's the terminology of rocks. And it's about that 90-day window. And so then we talk about the meeting pulse. So the meeting pulse for the rocks, that 90-day window, we discuss every 90 days, you take a deep breath, you come up from running around and working in the business to work on the business. You review, how did we do on our rocks for the last 90 days? Did we meet our priorities? If not, why not? If yes, let's celebrate, right? And then what are, for the next 90 days, what are our priorities and rocks? So that's the 90-day world. And again, get that throughout the entire organization. The meeting pulse, in addition to those quarterly and using the 90-day windows, this is where we go to the weekly L10 meeting that you referenced earlier. So when we work with companies, we ask them to rate how good are their internal meetings, and typically answers, the average comes out to their, on a scale of 1 to 10, they're like a 4. So we work with them with this level 10 or L10 format to help drive their meetings, their weekly meetings, up to a level 10, so that each week they're nailing it. And the meeting pulse, because if you set those 90-day rocks and then don't think about them until 2 weeks before the next 90-day window starts, what you find, right, is there's no action until day 80 to get these done. But with a meeting pulse, right, we talk about the pulse. This is the weekly meeting that brings it forward every time. So the format, so 5 things that make a great meeting. They are the same day of the week, at the same time, they start on time, end on time, and they have the same agenda. So that's what makes for a great meeting. So with the format we use is, first we start with a segue into the meeting. So this is just sharing good news, personal and professional, so that you understand, everybody is transitioning to working on the business and being present for the next 90 minutes for the leadership team. Then we talk about the reporting aspect, which is your scorecard. Again, everybody has a weekly metric, measurable. Did you make it or miss it? No discussion. You either made it or you missed it. If you missed it, we say drop it down and you move it to the issues list. Then we look at your rocks. We do a rock review so to see if you're on track or off track to accomplishing that 90-day goal. And we encourage you to have milestones along the way so that you can judge if you're on or off track. But it's on track or off track. Again, no discussion. It's off track, but no, we're not going to take time here. The reason we do that is because we're going to move it to the issues list. And then when we get to all the issues, we'll look at them and determine what's a priority for this week, because that may not be a priority this week based off of what else is in there. But what you'll find is that in a reporting structure or a reporting meeting in other organizations that aren't using EOS, is they'll spend time there talking about why they're off track or why they missed a metric. And that reduces their time to actually work on the priorities for the organization.
Yeah.
If that's a priority for the organization, we'll talk about it when we get to the issues. But for now, you either made it, you missed it, you're on track, or you're off track. Then we talk about what are your customer and employee headlines, so you get a pulse on what's happening both inside and outside the business. And then your to-do list, because you're going to get to-dos from these meetings, and are they done or not done? Again, no discussion, they're either done or not done. Then we get to the IDS portion of the meeting. So we recommend a 90-minute L10 every week for the leadership team. Of that 90 minutes, if you go through the top part quickly, 60 minutes or more every week is focused on IDS, resolving the issues in your business. And so in a prioritized manner. So that's what is a good use of a meeting, is to work on issues. Then at the end of the meeting, 5 minutes before conclusion, we come up, because we're going to end on time. We recap our to-dos, make sure everybody understands what their to-dos are. If there's any questions, we ask if there's any cascading messages. Is there anything we talked about in this meeting that somebody who's not in this meeting needs to know about? Oh yeah, we need to tell Mary about that because we made a change in the process or whatever. So cascading messages, and then we rate the meeting, because that's the way you improve. And if it's less than an 8, what would have made it better? So having everybody throughout the organization in some sort of L10 meeting, for the leadership team, 90 minutes. For other pieces of the organization, departmental, it may be 60 or a subset. But again, at least half the time focused on IDSing, the issue solving track, resolving issues. So if that's 100% strong in the traction component, that's 100% strong in all 6 components. If you do all those things, our goal is to get everybody to the ideal is to get everybody to 100% in all of those. Our real goal is to get to 80% strong across, because 100% is utopia. It's just not going to happen. But if you can get 80% strong, you're going to be making great progress. And most organizations are operating at about 20% strong, succeeding in spite of themselves. So, and in the link on the page there's that's going to be put in the show notes. You can go towards the bottom of that web page. There's an organizational checkup online that you can fill out, complete, and you'll get the results emailed to you, so you can see where you are today.
Yeah. And that meeting you just described is so magic. I mean, if you think about the difference in what's covered in 90 minutes that are structured like that. I mean, if you think about like a leadership team of, say, 5 or 6 people running different departments in an organization, coming together for 90 minutes, and in the first half hour, everybody is clear on exactly what's going on, who's done what, where we are on the quarterly priorities. And then you have a full hour to talk through and solve all the issues that have come up. You leave that 90 minutes compared to a typical meeting where it's like, let's all just get together and kind of talk about what happened last week, and there's no structure. It's night and day difference. I mean, it's not even a comparison. And I think that goes to your point that, most organizations, that's how they operate. And that's why, they're at like a 20% efficiency compared to, EOS organizations. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think, once you have the structure, I remember talking about how once the structure is set up, like you talked about, typically it's 3 days for an organization to get the structure in place. Then everything else is just an issue, because you've got the structure and the tools to solve those issues. So it's just like, what are the issues as we're operating and working and making progress toward the outcome that we all agreed on?